1 week season.
1 week season, fam. La Familia. Welcome back. It is week 16, FanDuel Labs. I'm coming to you after a very successful week 15 for myself. We'll get into that shortly. But yeah, we have 3 weeks left in the NFL season. Got some playoff races heating up. We've got some changes within teams that we'll have to talk about at the quarterback position. Just a lot going on. So, Christmas just around the corner. Obviously, a lot of people got a lot of things that they are thinking about right now and going on. So if we can keep our eye on the ball and be focused and build some high quality lineups, we can prosper. Go forth and prosper, my friends. So with that, Maximus, my esteemed colleague, how are you doing today?
Hello, good sir. So we had a nightclub last week, and now we have money falling out of the sky. Guys, Mike is making it rain based on the results you told me on Sunday. So congrats to you.
Thank you. Yeah, for those who are not members, who aren't aware, I had a first place finish. This was actually on DraftKings in the afternoon only. So the 4 p.m. slate of games, which I actually write an article for every week for our Inner Circle members. It's up on our scroll every week. But yeah, I managed to take down the $3.20 max contest with about 40,000 entries. Actually was the highest score on the slate across any contest. Would have won the $15. But I, just time-wise and stuff, I didn't get in that one this week. Usually how I do it is I'll build 20 in the $3 and then I'll build however many more for the $15. So it's not like I just would have played this in both. I would have probably taken those same 20 lineups and then made some alterations. So might have cost myself a little bit of coin, but it's not as simple as like, oh, I should, if I played it in the 15, I win 100K, which is what I would have won. Or at least that's how I'm helping myself sleep at night right now. So anyways, here's the lineup. Jared Goff with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam LaPorta, brought it back with James Cook, James Conner at the running back position, and then Devontae Smith, Quentin Johnston, Hunter Henry, and the Broncos defense. A couple things. It was interesting to me. Devontae Smith and James Cook kind of were the keys to this lineup, obviously combining for 60 points, but the ownership's at 10% and 7% on a 5-game slate. That's actually like really low ownership. So those two kind of were the key, and Cook's the guy I wasn't even really on last week at all. I was very, very high on Josh Allen. And it just was like Sunday afternoon after the inactives for the late games come out. That's when I go and hand build these lineups. And yeah, most of them were built with Allen or Goff at quarterback. I think I had, of the 20 lineups I built, 22, I guess, because I did make two entries in the $15. But anyways, of them, I think I had like 3 or 4 Kyler Murrays and a couple of Justin Herbert, and the rest were all Allen or Goff. And basically, at a certain point, I was like, I'm so high on Allen this week, and obviously mixing his receivers in, I probably should account for Cook on 1 or 2 of these lineups. And so, yeah, I had Cook on 2 of my 20 lineups. And then Devontae Smith's the guy I wasn't very high on. But just when I was building a lot of lineups, that mid 5K range on DraftKings, low to mid 5K ranges, I kept having, I kept having a roster spot in that range. And it's like, well, I mean, he was 7,800 a few weeks ago on DraftKings. So prices come way down. What if they can't stop the run? So I threw him into a few entries. The other, the Bills receivers, Amari was obviously Amari with the goose egg. That was wild. But obviously I had him in a lot of lineups. So that like little like tweak was like, okay, like I'm really high on Amari, specifically with Josh Allen. If I'm not playing Josh Allen here, and I don't think, Amari gets there, okay, there's Cook, and then Smith kind of fit in there in that same range. I actually built um it's a 40,000 person tournament, 39,635, I guess. But I had 4 of the top 100 entries. And one of them, the same exact lineup except for Marvin Harrison instead of Devontae Smith. So basically I just built the whole lineup and then threw one in with Devontae and one in with Marvin at the same price, just thinking both are the type of guys that if things break the right way could have a big game. And everything else hit and one of them hit, and here we are.
It's interesting seeing this team for the first time. Great foreshadowing of where we're going to start on FanDuel for our roster build. But also looking at the percentages, James Cook is who won it for you. And it's reasonable he wouldn't have been that owned because like Ray Davis is getting touches, Ty Johnson's getting targets and touches. Josh Allen runs the ball. So, I mean, it's such a thin, it's on the surface, a thin play. But still, on the flip side, James Cook is a guy you would have drafted before, pretty high up in best ball or in your drafts. And he still has the skill and the talent level, indoors in a dome to still, be a part of an offense that inherently is very spread out. But, great move there. Knowing that he was most likely going to be low owned, probably maybe that factored into it to differentiate yourself from, especially with afternoon only when percentages are all pretty relatively stacked, on the face of it.
Yeah. And yeah, for all those reasons, he played on 41% of the snaps only. So for a running back at, 6,800, which is the equivalent to like probably 8K on FanDuel. For a running back at that price, playing less than 50% of the snaps, he had less than 50% of the running back touches as well. So it's like, I don't know, it's not like there's a reason I wasn't like that high on him. But also it's like, well, I'm very, very high on this Bills situation. I think this game is going to be a shootout. And I can be right about one thing. That's one thing. Sometimes I think leverage is an overused thing where people always think of it like as an either or, where like if this guy does well, it will take away from this guy. But like this was a situation where it's like, well, if Josh Allen's doing as well as I think, then the offense is, probably moving the ball a ton. And Cook, he can make some big plays. And everything just kind of worked out. And then, I've been doing some playoff best ball over on Drafters, getting ready. Going to do a podcast training session for that. Just kind of talking about the strategy there. I know we had our Best Ball Plus product. I know this is your first year doing best ball. It sounds like you've got doing pretty well in the regular season contest.
Yeah, on Drafters, the $2 contest, I have a team in third place at the moment with 2 weeks to go. And there's definitely a few what you would call inflection point players that I need to do well that are, as far as the teams that happen to be around me within the top 25, do not have. We have a lot of the same players. Like I think every single team is Jamar Chase, like uniformly on this contest. And then everything else kind of varies, but I noticed just around me, nobody's got Nico Collins really. Nobody has Kyron Williams. George Kittle is another one. So the good news is most of these teams are still in playoff contention or are going to be competitive into week 17, especially, hopefully. And so, I'm very excited to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I think I got it up on the screen here. Lamar and Tua. Jerome Ford, good news there not for Nick Chubb, but for him. Justice Hill, the Ravens have 2 competitive games. He's passing down back, so he, should theoretically be on the field a little more in those competitive spots. Nico, like you talked about, he's he missed all that time. So like it was hard. It was a thin path. You didn't have any major injuries at your receiver position, which is huge. So that's where most Nico teams probably also ended up with one of like Diggs or Godwin or Rashee Rice or Shaheed or, any of those guys that took like these big hits. So yeah, basically it's going to come down to maybe like me last year, that Lamar to likely stack or something. But overall, extremely healthy, which, that's half the battle. Draft good structurally and hope for good health. And, you're in the mix.
J.K. Dobbins may be back week 17 too. So that'd be an extra added running back to put in the mix possibly. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Khalil Shakir is another one nobody has. I'm shocked at that way. Like Shakir is such a good value, if I remember correctly, when you're drafting. And also, even Devontae Walker got in the mix for the Ravens last week. He even caught a touchdown, so he could be relevant. Or Malik Washington probably more so. I'm not sure about Waddle yet for this week, but Malik could be somebody too.
I think with Washington, Washington and Ford, those guys stepping into bigger roles, that'll be big for you for sure. And then let's see, you've got Lamar, Justice Hill, Nico,
Shakir.
Walker, and likely all are guys who play on Saturday. So and then you got QJ plays on Thursday as well. So I'm sure Saturday night you'll be feeling pretty good. But it's fool's gold. Don't look in the middle of the week. Don't look in the middle when some games have been played. It just gets you too excited.
Yeah. Now, I was telling you and Billy, I remember Justice Hill was my locked-in round 1920 guy. And nobody was ever taking him. And it's like, look, they're one of the best offenses in the league. He is running back too, and he's a pass-catching running back. I'm shocked, Henry obviously has been durable and hasn't gotten injured this year. But, all those factors is why I think Justice Hill was such a great value in best ball if you can get him in the 19th or 20th round. But
anyway. Sure. Well, the people came here to see a FanDuel lineup, so let's waste no more time. Let's get right to it. If you want to start us off, where are we going this week? Where are we starting?
Yes, sir. So there's going to be a lot of historical narrative that I think most people will think this is a risky play possibly, and then also historical FanDuel bias. Maybe there's people that are playing on FanDuel because it used to be we wanted to target rushing quarterbacks. That also passed, chunk plays, and there wasn't any bonuses until this year. But now we have the passing bonuses. Things are a little bit different when it comes to the quarterback position. So I'm actually going to go to a guy who, like I said, historically, the narrative is he doesn't play good in cold weather. I actually did check the weather report for this game. Now, obviously, it's still pretty far out, but at the moment, it has the conditions at 32 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour winds, partly cloudy, no precipitation. So it's not terrible for this time of year. But we're going to go ahead with your team, your winning team, in essence, Jared Goff. We're going to go at quarterback here. So his price is at $7,800 this week. Really good price on FanDuel. For him, he's been a lot higher than that, I think, throughout the course of the season here and there. And Detroit did lose, albeit an epic game with the Bills. So now they are tied with the Vikings, even though they hold the tiebreaker by beating the Vikings twice. But they can't afford to lose another game here. The Vikings are right on their tail. They also would like to have the first overall seed because then you have the bye situation. And the nature of their coach is aggressive and relentless. So they are a kind of team that they don't just play at a ceiling based on the competition, which was the case last Sunday. We also saw them exhibit against the Jaguars earlier this season a willingness to just keep their foot on the pedal regardless of the opponent. So at a pretty affordable price at $7,800. And the other part of this equation is they have lost one of their two running back stalwarts, sadly, for the season, and David Montgomery. So that leaves us with a more concentrated backfield of a guy that we love anyway throughout the season, and that I rail every week in the 1 week season FanDuel Discord to play this man. And so we're going to pair him with Jahmyr Gibbs, and we're going to complete this stack with Sam LaPorta at tight end at a very good price of $6,000. Sam LaPorta has been really good the last 3 or 4 weeks. He's been targeted 10, 7, 6 times twice. He's had a couple of receiving touchdowns. He was second in team targets just last week. So it seems like, he's completely healthy he was kind of nicked up a little bit earlier in the season. And it seems like he's hitting his stride right now. And a very strategic, I think, stack here, stacking a running back and a tight end. Obviously with the wide receiver room, you got Amon-Ra, you got Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick is starting to enter the fray a little bit more now. And of course, Jameson is always a good price, of course. You could go that route. But the good thing about this is you have a core stack. And then as far as the bringbacks for the Bears, overall they haven't looked good, but they have the pieces and the weapons to insert as a bringback in this situation. And we can go anywhere here. You could go DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Roman Dunze. Not sure about Swift because the Lions, typically that's their strength, is the rush defense. But I think any of those guys are viable, and they're all priced extremely well in the $5,900 to $6,300 range. I may let you pick dealer's choice on which Bear you would want to bring this back with. And then whichever one it is, though, maybe I'll say DJ Moore just for the sake of, after we feel the defense, and there actually is a few cheap defenses that are playable, that are viable this week, we'll have a pretty healthy salary to see where you would like to go elsewhere to continue the build.
Yeah. I like Moore. Allen, he's been good. He's getting targets late in games. Their offense has been so bad in the first half of games. Looking back at let me pull it up here because I don't want to misspeak because it's been really bad. They were down 13-0 to the Vikings on Monday Night Football. They were down 24-0 to the Niners the week before. When they played the Lions on Thanksgiving, they were down 16-0. And then before that, the Bears game, the Vikings game, they were down 14-10 at half, but it was 24-10 through 3 quarters. So, they've got their last 4 games, basically, they haven't scored in the first half of their last 3 games. And I agree with you, but as far as like the Lions can tend to be aggressive, and they, like the Jaguars game, the Titans game, those were earlier in the season, their home games. They were not so depleted. So I do think that the Bears need to, for this to have some sort of ceiling, like even Jared Goff pass attempts, other than that one Jaguars game, when part of it was him coming off the 5 interception game against the Texans. So for him to have a really big game, along with Gibbs not to get pulled, because without Montgomery, I do think Gibbs is a guy they'll try to protect once they can. So I think we're going to need Chicago to have more success offensively than they have. And I think Moore is probably the guy likeliest to do that, likeliest to spark that, whether it's by a big play or them just being more effective at finding ways to get him the ball. And the flip side of that, though, is the Lions could come out and do really well, and it could be 24-7 at halftime. But like a lot of times the blowout angles are overplayed, because it doesn't take that much for like a team to stay just close enough where the opponent feels uncomfortable. And yeah, I think that the Bears pass defense, it gets a little bit of like they've been getting more pressure this year, but the Lions' offensive line is so good. I'm not really concerned about that. So really like the stack in general. I think the Lions probably score a lot of points. And to your point, I do think Jared Goff, the cold weather matters to some extent, but it doesn't mean it doesn't mean he can't do well in it, if that makes sense. So do like that. Next guy I'm going to add to this, his price has gone up again, was just on my winning roster last week, but James Conner. Panthers run defense has been awful all season. Conner coming off his best game of the season, 31 points, went for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on 21 touches. He's involved in the pass game. Arizona also, they are right in the mix. NFC West is still very tight. The Rams and Seahawks both 8-6. Cardinals are 7-7. And their last 2 games they play the Rams next week, actually. And then the Rams play the Seahawks in week 18. So despite everything in Arizona, like they need to, they're very much in the mix. Jonathan Gannon's second year making the playoffs would be a big deal. And their backfield, like Connor's going to be in like full workhorse mode. Trey Benson went down with an ankle injury. Amari DeMercado, who's the other back that's been involved throughout the year. He's on injured reserve. So it's DJ Dallas is the backup. But Connor's going to be the guy. And yeah, I would assume even with his elevated price tag up in the 8K range this week, he'll be highly owned, but he's a pretty strong confidence bet. And we want to have some strong confidence bets. I think, the Goff in cold weather, whatever, is not a thin play, but like, we need that to overcome some historical, how things have played out historically a little bit. So you don't want to be swimming upstream on too many spots on your roster. And then I'm just going to add what will also likely be chalk with the Falcons defense at 4K, facing the Giants with, it sounds like Tim Boyle might be. DeVito left with a concussion. Drew Lock still has the ankle injury. And I don't think the Giants want to win. Feel like getting the top overall pick is like a big deal for them, or top 3 at least. So I think that the motivation is overplayed. I think when people talk about NFL teams, like, oh, this team's going to try harder because of this, that, or the other. Like Rodgers last week, like he wasn't trying harder. He just had a really good matchup and 2 really good receivers. But like on the flip side, the front office can choose to not put the best team on the field. And I think that, the Falcons defense they've been torn up by a few really good offenses, but they've been really good against some poor offenses. So this would be the latter situation. So yeah, about 6,400 left, 2 receivers and a flex. Is there any receiver? Is there a receiver that's standing out to you, or a situation that you would want to think about next?
Yeah, a couple things in retort on the Lions Bears. One thing I do like about DJ Moore is you actually saw him rushing the ball on Monday night. Like, he clearly run plays where he was in the backfield in addition to the jet sweeps and the little screen passes to the flats. And so, yeah, they were actually using him. Now, it may have just been because they're thin without Roshan, and Swift is, not 100%. But the fact remains that'll probably be the case again this week. So I do like DJ Moore. The thing with Goff, and yeah, you made a point of, the pass attempts. My thinking there is just with Montgomery sadly out for the year, and I think that's just going to increase. It's just by nature of they don't have that double throng rushing attack now, and Gibbs is a pass catching running back. So I just think that's going to increase the pass volume for Goff. And again, we could just tell you play Josh Allen every week. and then the show's over in 5 minutes. So clearly, don't get me wrong. I mean, you have Josh Allen there. He could very well go nuclear again and just nuke everything. But we got to try to, we're trying to give you some other angles to think about that can play out a certain way where you can, maximize the potential of it. And Goff has shown ceiling. I mean, if you look at last week against Josh Allen, I mean, I think he matched Josh Allen in points actually. So I think they were both around 44 or something. So the ceiling is there, is what I'm saying. It is possible. And in this setup where they have to win to keep pace, the Bears, to your point, look, I don't know what it is with them. They look absolutely horrible in the first half, but they always seem to put up the equivalent of garbage points toward the end. And they, a couple of guys are at least fantasy relevant. So there's that angle too.
They have a poorly structured offense.
Yeah, exactly.
They can't. They have a not good offensive line, so they can't run the ball against any sort of decent defensive front. And their route concepts and structure have been flawed from the start of the year. So Caleb Williams is kind of just dancing around back there, hoping something can happen. And when teams are playing their full normal base defense coming out in the start of the game, like they just can't sustain drives. And basically it takes a couple quarters and then halftime, like Caleb actually experiencing it and then looking at like the film of it. And then the defense softens up a little because the Bears are behind. And that's like, basically it becomes, as long as the defense knows, the prevent angle is overplayed, but like defenses know, like if we just don't let them hit like a 70-yard pass play and then have a quick 3 and out, like it's going to be a really thin path for them to get back in it. So just structurally has not been great, but with all their injuries for the Lions, the secondary and defense, DJ Moore is really talented. I could see him shaking free here early.
Correct. A couple of other defenses real quick I had in mind, but you make a good point with the Falcons. I mean, the Giants are draft pick wise probably mailing it in, so that is a good one. Also at the Cowboys at 3,400, you'd have some Sunday night exposure. The defense has looked a lot better. They are playing the Bucs, but as good as Mayfield is, he is turnover prone. When he gets a ferocious pass rush, which Micah Parsons will provide, Dallas, I guess, remotely by a slither is probably still probably more than remote, but I think they'll still be playing. And then you also have the Raiders at 3,200 at home against Mac Jones, albeit Mac Jones actually looked really good last week, and he's got Brian Thomas and company, but those were playable defenses, but we can definitely stick with the Falcons. That makes a lot of sense too. So on the flex spot, we do have clear value in this price range, and you alluded to it when we were going over drafters. And by the way, I love your James Conner take. That's music to my ears for that drafters team, but I digress. We can go down to 6,600 and Jerome Ford for the Cleveland Browns. He is now the lead back. Sadly, Nick Chubb is out for the year, playing a defense who is not a great defense by any stretch. And I actually love the Cincinnati side of the ball offensively too, if doing multiple entries. But, Ford is just a great value, price considered for his role now as the lead back. And so if we put him in the flex, we got 2 spots left at 6,300. You were asking about receiver. I definitely one in particular, which would be in the same game that the defense you picked is, and that would be Darnell Mooney at a 6,400. Mooney, he fired up a bit, kind of looking, my screen is, actually he had nothing last week. Wow. Well, he's a deep threat. He has ceiling. I think he's good at that price range to potentially consider to fill out this team. And then I'll throw it back to you for if you have somebody else in mind or maybe finish in the last 2 spots here.
Yeah, I'm going to overrule, and I'm going to go to a spot that I'm going to go to Keon Coleman. So the rookie receiver, he had missed a bunch of time for the Bills. The Bills actually have the highest team total on the slate. They're huge favorites, projected to score over 30 points this week against the Patriots. Patriots play a lot of man coverage. They've got a really good kind of lockdown corner in Christian Gonzalez, who he locked up Marvin Harrison there last week. My guess would be when Amari Cooper's on the field, Gonzalez will be on him. And Coleman actually led in his first game back last week. He led Bills so Curtis Samuel got hurt. He played 19 snaps, but he got hurt. Kind of expect they won't rush him back. This isn't really a game that they're going to feel like all hands on deck, I think. So Coleman, 44 snaps, led all Buffalo receivers, only had 2 targets. One of them was a really deep target. And so just getting a receiver that's on the field the most for a quarterback that is just scorching hot, and team is projected for over 30 points at just 5,300. And I talked a little bit about, I think Connor and Gibbs, and I don't worry about running back too much. But I think, like, as far as ownership, like Connor, Gibbs, and then Ford with Nick Chubb out, facing a Bengals defense that hasn't been great against running backs. I think those 3 will all be very popular. The Falcons D, I think, will be very popular. So just being kind of aware of just ways we can get ceiling in different kind of creative ways. So Coleman, and then I'm going to say Garrett Wilson here for the Jets. Devontae obviously had the massive game that last week, but now they're up to a $1,300 price difference. I have no idea where ownership will come in, but the Rams have not been great against perimeter receivers this year. Wilson, we still know he can get it done. He actually was like outperformed. Devontae had like 135 yards in the last 5 minutes of the game. Did you know that?
That's crazy.
Like, there was a stat on Twitter, one of the beat reporters was like, it's the most in the last 5 minutes of a game ever. But he was at like 55 yards and a touchdown through 55 minutes of the game, and he ended up dropping like 45 points. So yeah, what do you think? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, Garrett Wilson, the Rams are going to be putting up points most likely. They've been humming on offense. The Jets don't really have much to play for, but I'm sure they're going to want to be competitive and finish the year strong at home. Also, for $200 more, however, we have Mr. Brian Thomas, who could also be considered. He is attached to Mac Jones, but obviously he had a ceiling game last week. They're playing the Raiders, who are not a good defense. And Brian Thomas, we've been railing on him all year. I absolutely love his skill set. Somebody else you could consider for ceiling that probably won't be that owned either, just based on the fact that they're not a team in contention. And so with that leftover salary, maybe if multiple entries, you could, I think he's viable to consider too.
I think both Thomas and Wilson they'll carry some ownership. They're not going to be completely overlooked. I'm looking at it more from like a ceiling perspective. Like if we put Mooney in Michael Penix's first game as starter, he might have he could hit for sure. Like Penix he'll let it rip downfield. He could have a nice game, but also kind of saw it with the Ravens last week. Even as good as their passing game hit, Lamar only threw it 25 times, so it kind of limits what you can do. And then if we had played Mooney, we've already got more, so probably not. We would have had 6,200. So it's like Allen, not really feeling Thielen. I guess. So yeah, my idea was basically Coleman getting that cheap ceiling and getting us up to either Thomas or Wilson as guys who we know are super talented, that they just naturally have that ceiling in any matchup kind of. So I think that would be, I do like the Thomas call though. But then if you did want to play Mooney, my suggestion there then would be maybe swap LaPorta for Jamison Williams. Kind of relying on like the big play, and then you could just move over to like Hawkinson or Otten or something.
I will say with Thielen, it does give you correlation with James Conner, and he will get targeted at home. Arizona is not really a shutdown defense, so I think that the Thielen thing would be viable. But yeah, I also like your flip around there with Jamison Williams. I'm always, he's always a factor, or can be. So yeah, either or, I'm fine with.
I think I prefer the Coleman Thomas look.
I'd say my thing with Coleman is, and I like him, it's just Buffalo is so spread out. You just, like, for instance, Amari Cooper, 0 really in that kind of game. It's just like, it's shocking. So it's just, you just never know where the pendulum is going to swing with the Buffalo passing game. It's just Josh Allen's Superman, and he's gonna find whoever he chooses to find. But yeah, I mean, theoretically, it definitely works.
Yeah, and I guess it just depends on like. I think in like you usually play that like 5 max, like there's like 400 or 500 people in it. Like Mooney, Thielen probably makes more sense there because they're a stronger bet. They're a pretty strong bet to at least get you like 20 points. Like probably going to end up somewhere in like the 18 to 30 range between the two of them. But like Coleman and Thomas, like that's one that I could see like them combining for 50 points. And I don't think really Thielen and Mooney in their respective roles and game environments, I don't really think that's like that combinatorial, that combined point output is really in play. Whereas Coleman, like at 5,300, he's got, a 100-yard game. He caught a 60-yard pass last week. So it doesn't take that much for him to have 4 or 5 catches. If one of them's a long one, and then he gets a red zone touchdown, which he's had a couple of those this year. For a team that we expect to score a ton of points, and then Thomas and Wilson are just young, super explosive guys. So it's more about the archetype, I think, for me.
And by the way, you brought up a good point, guys. We play in some of the same tournaments, but we also play in different ones, and we have been agnostic on contest selection for the show this year, but it was good to point out that was a great shout to what type of contests certain players would fit in and what the mindset should be, maybe if it's like a larger field one. So that was good that you have the differentiation of thought process there.
Basically, like in that 5 max, what is it, a $60 entry that you usually play? 65
team up to 5.
Yeah, so basically, you don't need to play a guy like Coleman in that. Like, you don't need to take on that like uncertainty in that contest. Like, it's better. You're probably better off, more likely to win it at these other spots. So then just playing like Mooney in a good matchup with Penix and replacing Cousins, a little bit more sure bet. And then Thielen with sounds like Xavier Legette is gonna miss this week, so Thielen's pretty strong bet for double-digit targets. Arizona kind of limits like long passes, so 10 to 12 targets for Thielen's probably pretty likely, but his kind of high end range is probably if he gets he could get over the 100, like he's been around it a couple times, so 8 for 110 and maybe he gets in the end zone. So that's a nice 20-point game. But we've seen we know Thomas and Wilson, they can put up, 30, 35. So that's where for me and like larger field stuff, I'd rather take a little more risk on with Coleman instead of Mooney to get that higher ceiling guy like Thomas or Wilson instead of Thielen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it makes completely sense the larger the field. Because, Gibbs is going to be – it's funny, Detroit running backs are usually never owned, but this time, as a result of Montgomery out, I'm sure Gibbs will be way more owned than he usually is. So, yeah, also there's that factor in large field. Coleman is probably not going to be very owned.
Well, he's gonna like break projection systems because he's so efficient per touch, and then now they're gonna project him for like 25, 20 to 27 touches. Like, he's projections are gonna like him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that does it for those listening on the podcast feed. The final lineup, we've got Jared Goff at quarterback, Jahmyr Gibbs at running back, and Sam LaPorta at tight end as a little Lions stack. Our other running back is James Conner, and our third running back, Jerome Ford, in the flex. And then we've got DJ Moore as a correlation piece with the Lions stack. And then we finished out with Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas, and the Falcons defense. So, will be interesting. I really like the build, and I like how, we talk, like you brought up for drafters for our best ball stuff, I talked about like inflection points. And I think like the rest of that lineup, like the other 7 spots, like makes sense in basically any level of tournament. And then you just got that like one little inflection point at the end where it's, what's the tournament I'm playing in? What is my competition doing? So we get late in the week and kind of get a feel for what spots are going to be popular, where ownership might be. You can kind of figure it out from there for sure. And, to my win last week where I got this, this big stack of cash right here. James Cook, Devontae Smith, those situations, just knowing what you're in. If it was a 1,000 person tournament instead of 40,000, like I probably don't place both Smith and Cook, and I probably wouldn't have needed to. So, I like it. Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, guys, know your contests, how it sets up. Obviously, this is Wednesday, so injury reports, weather reports, like right now I looked at that Chicago weather and it looks pretty reasonable, but, later in the week, if it's going to be a blizzard, then obviously you're probably not going to be on what we're talking about now. And then also your friendly reminder, yes, play Josh Allen always. That goes without saying. But yeah, no, it should be exciting. Let's finish the season strong here.
For sure. Well, everyone, we are check us out, oneweekseason.com. If you're not already a member, we have specials going on. You can get the rest of the season for dirt cheap, get access to all of our content. Check out the afternoon only article I write. We've got content coming out for the Saturday 2-game slate. And a lot going on. So hopefully you are all able to make it rain this weekend as well. Thank you for joining us. I am Mike. He is Max. Goodbye.